Hey everyone, you're listening to the Fantasy Uptick. I'm Jeremiah Bloom. Today I'm going to be doing my first episode on the NBA. I'm super excited the NBA season's back. I'm going to be talking about playoff predictions, bold predictions. I'm going to give you 5 guys to keep an eye on your DraftKings FanDuel lineups over the next 2 weeks, these 8 games that are going to be happening. Tomorrow I will be talking a little bit more about FanDuel and DraftKings, but right now I want to get into more of the predictions, how I kind of see this stuff playing out, and just talk to you about how excited I am the NBA is back. So with that, let's jump right in. Okay, so I want to basically first get into how I think this is going to play out. I don't think there's going to be much change in the Eastern Conference. I'll do the Eastern Conference first. I think it's going to pretty much go as advertised. I think the Pacers drop a little bit, and then it's going to they'll end up playing Boston in the first round. Orlando's going to climb over the Nets because the Nets, everybody opted out. The Wizards don't really have much left. The East is going to be a pretty easy. Nets will end up holding on to the 8th seed. Orlando will end up playing Toronto in the first round. And then Milwaukee will end up playing the Nets in the first round, and they're going to sweep the Nets. Orlando could win a game against Toronto basically because Jonathan Isaac, and I think a lot of that's going to depend on how good Isaac is. And Orlando's got some talent. They just kind of don't have shooters, and they're young. Toronto's an experienced roster. Obviously, they're just coming off a championship run. But Jonathan Isaac, a lot of people talk about the unicorn on offense with Kevin Durant and Kristaps Porzingis and those kind of guys. Well, Jonathan Isaac is essentially the unicorn on defense. He can play the point, he can play the bigs, he can go all over the court. He's a great defender. So if you haven't really watched a lot of Orlando basketball, which a lot of people have not, if Jonathan Isaac is playing a lot of basketball, tune into those games and watch him. He's an up-and-coming basketball player for sure. I'm really excited about seeing Miles Turner because Miles Turner, and again, this is one of the guys that's on my FanDuel DraftKings players to keep an eye on because Sabonis is going to probably out this year, right? So keep an eye out for Miles Turner because he's finally going to get an opportunity to be the big. He's going to give you a lot of blocks. He's probably going to give you double-doubles. He can shoot the 3. He's a guy that I really am interested in watching playing. On the same note, since we're talking about the bottom of the East, the Nets, Karis LeVert and Jarrett Allen are guys that I'm going to be starting a lot. Karis LeVert could actually be a superstar without Kyrie, Dinwiddie on the court, and then Jarrett Allen, there's no Jordan on the court. There's really no other options. They're not going to go scoreless. And I really am looking forward to seeing what Karis LeVert can do because he's a guy that I think is just underappreciated just in general. And this is really his opportunity. These 8 games and then the first round of the playoffs is really going to be an opportunity for him to showcase his abilities as the leader of the Nets during this little stretch. So it's a good time to get in on these guys, especially in DraftKings FanDuel. So Miles Turner, LeVert, Jarrett Allen. Another guy is Shabazz Napier, was having a good little run there towards the end with the Washington Wizards, but now Bradley Beal's not going to be playing. They're going to have to find points somewhere. So for my money, I'm going to go Shabazz Napier, and I think he's probably going to be a good value in a lot of those DraftKings FanDuel lineups. So the East, you're going to have a lot of love there. You can find some values when you're setting your lineups, right? My bold prediction of the East when we're talking about schedules, I think that the 76ers are a really interesting team to watch. They're kind of adjusting how they bring out Simmons. They're going to play more at the 4 as opposed to the 1. So next to Embiid, now you got 2 bigs versus having a point guard and then 2 more bigs. But we'll see how that kind of plays itself out. Simmons is so talented. I think that could put a lot of pressure, and he's so fast that could put a lot of pressure on the defense. So I like 76ers over Miami. I think that could be a really good series. And I'm really interested to see 76ers versus Milwaukee in the second round. Because even though I think Milwaukee's a much better roster, and I really don't see how the 76ers will end up beating them. I think they're playing too good right now. Giannis is just unstoppable. He's playing at a great pace for the East. But I think they could be a little rusty because, again, I think they'll probably end up resting their players the last game of the year. Then they're probably going to sweep the Nets. Then they're just going to be sitting around. I could see the 76ers Miami game going to a 7-game series. And then you got Boston and Toronto, which I think they have no problems advancing to the next round. I think Milwaukee actually has a better series versus Toronto and Boston. And by better, I mean I think they do a little bit better at beating them. Like, I don't think that goes to 7 based on the simple fact that they'll have a matchup versus the 76ers, whereas I think they're just kind of sweeped the Nets or the Wizards, whoever get there, which I believe will be the Nets, right? Then we go to the West. Now the West is going to be really fun because there are a lot of teams that could end up pushing Memphis and getting that 2-game series. And for my money, based on the schedule and the talent, I think the New Orleans Pelicans end up catching Memphis, forcing a 2-game series. And then I think the New Orleans Pelicans actually beat Memphis 2 times in a row to get the 8th seed in the playoffs. They'll end up playing the Lakers, and I think they can beat them once in the playoffs. So that's my bold prediction. The Pelicans actually beat the Lakers in the first round of the playoffs 1 time because their schedule is super light. And with Zion on the court playing, Zion on the court playing 25 minutes or more, they are 10-7, right? Which might not sound like a lot, but that's a winning record, and if that was the case, they would have about the same record as Dallas. So this is a good team when Zion's getting his minutes, and I think that that's going to show in this 8-game stretch. A lot of it has to also do with they have an amazingly easy schedule, whereas some of the other teams just have kind of rough schedules and not as much talent. Portland has a tougher schedule. Memphis has a tougher schedule, and while I think Portland is as talented as New Orleans, I just don't think they're going to be able to keep it up because New Orleans is going to have just like an easy go at it going towards the playoffs, right? So then we get to Lakers. I don't think the Lakers have any issues getting out of the first round or the second round. I don't think they end up playing Houston in the second round. I know that's a popular opinion that Houston can be that sneaky team that gives teams fits, but I think they end up playing Oklahoma City because Jazz lost Brogdon Bogdanovic, who averaged 20 points a game, and I think that's a huge loss for Utah. I think Oklahoma and Houston end up passing them in the standings, which puts Utah around the 6th seed or the 7th seed, depending on whether Dallas can catch them. And Oklahoma and Houston are going to end up playing in the first round. And I honestly think Oklahoma is a better basketball team. I think the smalls, they can play small ball, plus they can adjust with Adams to play big and really put pressure on Houston because I don't think they have an answer for Adams or Noel, to be honest with you, who's a great defender down in the paint, right? So I think they just got more flexibility in a 7-game series. While the small ball game is fun and can really win some series, I just don't think in a 7-game series with a team like Oklahoma, who's got loads of talent and can adjust to what Houston's doing after a couple of games, I just don't think that Houston's is flexible to adjust in those series. So I think Houston's going to have a hard time getting out of round 1. I think Oklahoma actually does it. And what better like send-off for Chris Paul? I mean, not necessarily send-off because I'm sure he's going to play again next year, but Chris Paul getting traded from Houston Rockets so the Houston Rockets can go out and win, and then he goes to Oklahoma and then beats the Houston Rockets that traded him away in the first round of the playoffs. I just kind of see that just poetic justice of that happening. And then I think that in the second round, a lot of people are talking Clippers are the second best team, and it's really between Clippers and Lakers and who's going to play Milwaukee. But I think Denver Nuggets are getting they're getting slighted a little bit because the Clippers, even though they've only played 12 games at full strength, right now in scrimmages, Kawhi's shooting 26% from the floor. And I know it's scrimmages, and I'm not putting too much stock into it, but the point is he doesn't look good right now. And I think there is something to be said about like team cohesion, right? Montrezl Harrell's not there, Patrick Beverley's not there, and on the other end, Denver's been unhealthy all year as well. I mean, take a look at Michael Porter Jr., Harris, Murray, Barton, Millsap. All these guys have been hurt throughout the season and playing hurt even when they're not hurt. So again, this is not like I'm just saying, oh, well, Denver Nuggets, they weren't that good during the year. They struggled just as much as the LA Clippers have struggled with injuries. Maybe not as much, but they have struggled quite a bit themselves, right? And now they're actually on the bubble right now. They're all healthy. They're all practicing, playing together, and playing well. And then when we go to Jokic, who's a guy who usually starts off slow, he showed up after this hiatus in like the best shape of his life. And I know that's like the standard coach speak, but he actually looked skinnier, like he lost a lot of weight. And I think that that's going to benefit him overall. Now, he already had COVID, which is another thing that I actually kind of like going into this, because if there is an outbreak, your best player already having it, there's a better chance that he doesn't have it. I talked about this in one of my baseball episodes, but essentially, like, the percentages go way down if you've already had COVID that you end up getting it again. Right? So the fact that their best players already had it. And then Michael Porter Jr. is a guy that nobody's given enough love to. Everybody's talking about Zion Williamson. And Michael Porter Jr., when he was healthy, was really just, he added so much to the Denver Nuggets. So I think this is such a deep team. They can beat you with their smalls. They can beat you with their bigs. They can shoot the three. They can score. And I think they can adjust to play better defense over a 7-game series. Why the Clippers have all that as well, I don't think they have the big aspect. Montrezl Harrell's probably going to come back, but even when he does, I don't think you can rely on Harrell to really dominate in the post, whereas I think Jokic's going to be a problem for the Clippers, right? So I do think the Lakers end up beating the Nuggets once they beat the Clippers, and the Lakers end up going to the finals. I think Milwaukee, after struggling with the 76ers, walks into the finals. Lakers, Milwaukee, I can't wait to see that matchup. I am picking the Lakers. I know there's no news there. I've had other bold predictions. But Lakers, I mean, I calls it like I sees it. And I think that LeBron is still the best player in the world. Anthony Davis, LeBron combo. You got one of the best bigs in the world, one of the best point guard wings in the world. And I think overall, despite the lack of depth of some of these other teams, I think that's going to be too much to overcome, and then they're going to end up winning the whole thing this year. So that's my prediction for the season. Once again, I think the Lakers win. I think some of my bold predictions is I think Clippers get bounced in the second round. I think Rockets lose in the first round. I think the Pelicans end up making it to the playoffs to play the Lakers, and they win a game. I think the 76ers give Milwaukee a hard time in the second round due to Milwaukee being rusty, due to the fact that they're probably going to sweep. I don't really know how it's going to work as far as practice goes in the bubble when you got a bunch of games. I don't know how many courts they have or what's going on. So maybe I'm wrong there, but I'm just kind of concerned with that because they're just going to be sitting around, I'm assuming. Well, you know, like maybe shooting basketballs, playing on the side, but how much practice time are they really going to have when they don't have games to play? And then some of the guys I like, 5 names that I like for this 8-game, 2-week stretch: Miles Turner, Karis LeVert, Jared Allen, Shabazz Napier, DeJounte Murray in DraftKings and FanDuel. Again, I'll be doing a DraftKings FanDuel episode tomorrow. With that being said, that's it for today's show. Let me know what you think about some of my predictions, some of the guys that I talked about for DFS. If you got any questions, put them in the comments below. If you like the content, remember to like and subscribe. And until next time, see ya!